Mark, comment? Sound set, thank you.
Okay. The first question's an easy one. Could you say and spell your name so we know that it's, we get it right for the lower third? And then I think your title might, do you want your title to be author of Outside Valentine?
Sure.
And then maybe, okay, do you mind saying that?
My name is Liza Ward, Lizaward, and I'm the author of Outside Valentine.
And also, could you say your relationship to the victims as well?
My grandparents were killed by Starkweather. Do you want me to, I'm sorry, say Charlie or Starkweather?
I think Charlie.
Oh, okay.
I think we'll say Carol Ann.
Right, I don't know why I hate that, but I can do it. I just feel...
Say Starkweather then.
No, I'll say Charlie, but for some reason, it's a weird thing that I object. Like, he's to be so personal with him. But I will do it. I don't mind. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well, if you revert, it's totally okay.
Okay.
It's easier. It's like less syllables.
Right.
That's why I've been saying it. But if you would prefer it, just go with what makes you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Can I adjust your hair?
No, go ahead. Yeah, it's weird. I've never wanted to call him Starkweather. I mean, Charlie. It's weird.
Either.
I don't know. It seems so like...
For me, it's like literally a matter of syllables.
Of course. Yeah, and I'll do it. But it was interesting what I object to.
Sorry. No, it's just this.
I think one thing that's
just
hard,
went straight.
I don't know
It was-
will be difficult for you because
That's-
we're not really getting into Carol King. But Carol
Like that?
Ann
Right.
Fugate, she was actually called Carol more of the time, but we're saying Carol Ann. just
Right,
so
of course.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
the two.
Right.
And Carol King, I think of like the singer too, which is.
All right, now everyone's just gonna touch your hair here.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that good, guys?
Can you, on the right side of her face, there's like one, on the right side of her face. There, yeah. You got it.
Renee, don't even know left from right.
Just depending which way you're facing.
Alright. Sorry about that, guys. We're good. We're good.
Still rolling, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so, what did we talk about? We talked about 6. Okay, setting the scene. So, it's the morning of Wednesday, January 29th, 1958. And I'm wondering if you can kind of set the scene for what is going on in Nebraska. What sort of situation do authorities have on their hands? And if it's possible, could you say the date in your answer?
It's January 29th of 1958, and the bodies of Carol King, Bob Jensen, and August Mayer were discovered the evening before. The entire state of Nebraska is in a panic. They don't know where Charlie has gone, and they don't know if Carol Ann is with them, and if she is, how involved she is, if she's a hostage or a willing accomplice, or even if she's still alive. And so they have set up roadblocks across the state, expecting them to have gone as far away as possible from the scenes of the crime.
There's been a lot of different kinds of crime, and I'm wondering if you can comment on how random they are, or just like, is there a pattern necessarily to the crimes that police are seeing at that point?
There has been no apparent pattern to these crimes. Carol Ann's 2-year-old sister, a farmer who they're not sure of his relationship to them, and 2 teenagers that were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So anyone could be next as far as they're concerned.
What conclusions are police drawing about where Charlie and Carol Ann might be? You kind of have touched on it. I
Right.
think it's kind of like they know the medical examiner thinks that Bob Jensen and Carol have been dead for about 12 hours, so that would give them about a 12-hour lead to drive somewhere.
Right.
So what conclusions what are police kind of theorizing?
The police are theorizing that Carol Ann and Charlie have had 12 hours to get away, and that they have most likely gone as far as possible, whether that's towards Canada or Mexico. They don't know.
And they have, I guess it's a 20-hour head start, so they could be like 1,000 miles. They could be hundreds of miles away. Do you mind just making that connect the dots point?
They've had a 20 hours to escape after the last killing, so they could be as much as 1,000 miles away from Nebraska at this point.
I'm sorry, George, can you stick down a little bit?
Stick down.
Yeah, just like 3 inches.
We talked about how there were checkpoints set up, and I'm wondering if you could restate that and then also say if they've had any luck, if they found, if there have been any spotting, sightings of Bob's car.
Right.
There haven't been.
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Yeah, it's just 10 seconds.
Mississippi 2, Mississippi.
Was that right?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Great. You're set.
So they have police have set up checkpoints all over the state searching for Bob Jensen's car, but as this time they have had no luck. Do you want me to do that again?
Sure.
Okay. Police have set up checkpoints all over the state looking for Bob Jensen's car, but have had no luck thus far.
It must have been kind of, I think I'm going off this now, but I just think it must have felt like it was the Stone Ages then. Like there was no cell phone, no one was taking a photo from there was no stoplight that had a camera in it. There was no like recognition of license plate. There was no software that did that. So I'm wondering if I wonder if police were wondering, do you think police were wondering like this could be it we might be in for the long haul, I don't know how we're going to catch this guy. He could be, if he is in Mexico, like, where on earth would we catch him?
They must have been really flummoxed by the situation and not known at this point if they were ever going to catch him, because he could be, by this point, so far away. So it must have felt like, picking a needle out of a haystack at this point.
We just went over this. Something is, it's just after noon that day, and Lincoln police get a call. And after these 6 murders have already been committed, this one is kind of a surprise. And I'm getting back to the neighborhood thing. So police get a call. What did they learn from that call, and why is it surprising to them?
Police get a call that 3 more bodies have been discovered, not in Canada or Mexico, but in a prominent neighborhood right in Lincoln itself. And this is completely surprising to them because they have no idea why Charlie would have doubled back to the very place where the spree of killings had begun.
Yeah. Just to timestamp, do you mind saying the first line again? The day after the bodies of August Meyer, Bob Jensen, and Carol King are discovered, police get another call.
Right, okay. The day after Bob Jensen, Carol King, and August Meyer's bodies have been discovered, police get another call. 3 more bodies have been discovered in Lincoln. Not in, okay.
That's good.
Like
Thank
not
you.
in,
It
sorry.
was just the time. It was
Yeah.
just the amount of time.
Yeah.
And who are the victims?
The victims are C. Lauer Ward, 47, a prominent industrialist, and his wife, Clara, who is 46, and their maid, Lillian Fensel, 51.
I am worried I stepped on you at the very top. Did I? Audio-wise? Yeah?
Close.
Okay. Do you mind saying that? Sorry, one more time. I was talking as you started.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That was, so, do you mind saying that just one more time? Same thing you just said.
Okay. The victims are C. Lauer Ward, a prominent industrialist, his wife, Clara, 46, and their maid, Lillian Fensel, 51.
Sorry.
Here.
Can you do this with, kind of these flyaways?
There's just 2 more hairs.
Shoot.
No,
My
you
hair,
love your.
my hair is so
Don't be
amazing.
It's so pretty. It's like the issue of having hair. It's-
Maybe we should have done a bun.
Yes.
No, it's good. So much volume.
Let me know.
It's just, like, it'll be wild if like your son or daughter starts doing that.
Yeah, I hope it's, well, I guess my son could do it. It's
A little bit more, George?
2016.
There.
It's fine. That's, yeah.
Does that look, Alex?
Yeah. Thank you, Maria. That's great. Good, George. That looks good.
Maria, would you check something if you have a chance? I was under the impression, and maybe you know more, at first I thought that both Mrs. Ward and Lillian Fensel were tied up.
They were,
They both were. And then later I read an account that said that just Lillian
no,
was.
they both were.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, so can you tell us, what does the crime scene look like? When police get there, what does the crime scene look like? And if it's possible to remember June in present tense, that would be
Yes. When the police get there, they discover the Ward's Packard is gone. Lauer Ward is lying in the doorway, shot in the back. Clara Ward is upstairs in her nightgown, tied up, dead from multiple stab wounds to the head and chest. Lillian Fensel is tied up as well and suffered numerous stab wounds.
Is there any sign of any sexual assault?
There is no sign of any sexual assault, and nothing much has been stolen except for the car.
What is in the cars? Do you know this? In place of the car of the Ward car is Bob Jensen's car. That's in its place, and I don't think I included that in here. But do you mind saying that?
No, in place of the Ward's Packard is Bob Jensen's car. Do you want me to say where in the garage or?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
And how long does the medical examiner think that they have been dead?
The medical examiner thinks that they have been dead for approximately 12 hours.
Okay, so as an investigator, what kind of conclusions are being drawn at this point? And it's that, how did they get into the house? How was Lauer killed? And the crime seems to be random. That's where I'm going with that.
Investigators, I don't know, sorry, it's a different way of thinking about it, even though I know it's here. The investigators are changing their opinions about the case now. They're not sure if Carol Ann has been more involved than they previously thought, because it seems that it took more than one person to commit these murders. They're assuming that Charlie forced his way in that morning at gunpoint after C. Lauer Ward went to work, and that he tied up Mrs. Ward upstairs and stabbed her, and then Lillian followed, and they're assuming that he waited for Mr. Ward to come home from work, at which point he was shot in the doorway. But they're not, so now they think that anyone might be a victim, and the whole city of Lincoln is in a complete state of panic, because if he's right in Lincoln at this point, he came back, then he might be anywhere, and anybody might be Charlie. Anyone who looks the remotest bit like James Dean, anybody driving past their house. So fathers go to pick up their children at school with guns, and everyone locks their doors and is in a complete state of panic. Suspicion. The National Guard is brought in by the governor to patrol the streets, and no one has known any situation like this thus far in this area, which has been so safe.
I'm backtracking a little bit from the point you just made, that the crime, is there an obvious connection between, at this point, they don't know about his garbage report.
Okay.
So is there an obvious connection between Charlie and the Wards?
There is absolutely no connection whatsoever that they can figure out. Therefore, they think that anybody might be the next victim.
I know this is just one of these connect the dots things, that there's no connection between Charlie and the Ward family or the
Okay.
Wards.
There is no apparent connection between Charlie and the Ward family. Therefore, anybody might be his next victim.
Was the audio okay on that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We just covered a bunch of stuff. Did you know about Lauer Ward's relationship with the governor? That they just had a meeting the day before? You did know that? I'm wondering if you would mind bringing that point up. The governor called the governor just had,
Okay.
and then
Right.
and so he called the state troop, National Guard.
Do you want me to phrase it like first the meeting and then the National Guard, or however I...
However,
Okay. The governor calls in the National Guard just that earlier that, I'm sorry, let's take a front. The governor called in the National Guard
should we
and,
stop one more, just because you were so.
oh, sorry. The governor calls in the National Guard to patrol the city just earlier, late afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm like trying to figure out, I shouldn't say.
Previous day.
Okay, right, okay. The governor calls in the National Guard the previous day. He had a meeting with Lauer Ward in which Lauer had expressed dismay over the most recent killings.
I didn't know that part. We're stepping back away, bigger picture, Charlie. Who's Charlie Starkweather? Like, what was he like as a kid and then as a teenager? Kind of big picture stuff.
Charlie Starkweather seems to have had an ordinary upbringing before he went to school, at which point he was teased for a speech impediment. He had bowed legs, and he generally grew angry at the world for teasing him, for pushing him down. This was the way he saw the world.
Sorry, I'm gonna, Maria, can you just another one away,
Did that make it worse, Alex?
No, that's better. That's great.
Can I just go on a little bit about him? Like, he was...
Oh, wait until.
Okay.
I'm just working your audio, or Pete will get. Yes, go for it.
He seemed angry at the system.
Do you mind?
He
because I
seems,
stepped on-
yes,
I
right.
stepped- Well,
Okay.
I stepped on you a little
Okay.
bit, so wait a beat before I go and then say Charlie.
Okay. Charlie seems angry at the world, out of place in society. He's full of anger. And then he sees James Dean and rebel without a cause, at which point he feels as if he's seen himself and can slip into another skin and begins to dress like James Dean and act like James Dean. And he finally finds a way to express his anger.
And it's like he got energy from that. He was energized by that anger in a way. Do you think that's true, or if you don't, that's...
I guess he did, yeah. Charlie seems to have gathered energy from his anger, and is this anger that has fueled him.
Do you think that anger, I mean, is that, what drives Charlie? What is driving Charlie to kill?
What is driving what drives Charlie to kill is his anger at the world. And, well, like, I'm sorry, can I mention that do you want me to mention that he got hit on the head?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I just don't know, like, what you want me to say. Charlie works menial jobs. He flunks out of school. He is hit on the head with a paper baler a few months before he holds up a gas station and kills Robert Culvert. He complains of headaches. He has strange visions of death coming for him. He hates people, pretty much everybody but Carol Ann. And he finds peace only in the wilderness and hunting, and has, before these sprees, a strange affinity for animal life that he does not have for people.
What do you make of the connection he feels?
Thank you. Sound is set.
I'm getting to his connection with Carol Ann.
Okay.
What drew them together, why they like each other.
Okay.
Or even if they don't like each other, like why they haven't broken up yet.
Right.
Are we good?
Sounds great.
What do you make of Carol Ann and Charlie? And if it's possible, could we also talk about their, it could be a separate answer, but their age gap too? It's quite a bit of an age difference.
Charlie meets Carol Ann through his brother, who is dating Carol Ann's older sister. She is 13 at the time, and he is 19, which is scandalous even for these days. He is attracted to her, I think, because she's willing to go along with him. She accepts him for who he is, and he makes her feel like the most special person in the world. They create their own little world together in which other rules don't matter and other lives don't matter, and it's only their love for each other which has only has a consequence or weight in the world. And I think they must have felt doomed and exalted at the same time by each other.
Do you think both of them made each other feel both doomed and exalted?
I think they both did. Both Charlie and Carol Ann must have felt that they were getting a similar result out of each other. She didn't do well in school either. They called her spunky and kind of crass, and she was driving a car before she was of age. She was brave, and also irritated and rebellious. She had a new baby sister who was probably taking a lot of her mother's attention, and Charlie bought her toys. He made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. And I feel that she must have made him feel the same way.
What did her mom and stepdad think of their relationship? Did they like Charlie?
Carol Ann's mother and stepfather hated Charlie. They tried to end the relationship many, many times to no avail.
Do you think that they thought it was like, it's us against the world? I mean, is that what the dynamic of them as a couple was?
Charlie and Carol Ann must have felt like it was us against the world, or they must feel that. Do you want me to say it in the present tense? Or
Sure.
Okay. Carol Ann and Charlie feel like it's us against the world. Nothing else matters.
Do you think at this point, so by now they're 3 days into like the worst of the, you know, the true crimes, the body count has just gone up. And do you think Carol Ann, could you, I mean, if you feel comfortable saying it, do you think she felt scared? Do you think that she was thinking at this point, I gotta get out of this?
I think Carol Ann must have realized at a certain point how serious this was turning out to be, and that perhaps it wasn't quite what she bargained for. And I'm not sure particularly when that flip happened, but I feel like it must have happened somewhere in that journey. And so that I imagine by the time they get to the wards, she wants to get out of it, perhaps, but doesn't know how.
Yeah. Why, we're going back to Charlie's confession. Why does he say that he, I guess, picked out the wards? It wasn't, and why did he target their house?
Charlie says that he targets the ward house because...
Do you mind just starting with one more time?
Yeah.
Because there's a little stumble.
Charlie says that he targets the ward house because he is looking for a nice car, and he worked a garbage route in that area and knows that he could probably find a nice car and a nice house to hole up in for a while.
Why was Charlie a garbage collector in that neighborhood?
Charlie was a garbage collector in that neighborhood because I think his brother Rodney got him that job.
I think I worded that wrong.
Yeah, I don't...
Why, maybe it's just a matter of restating that Charlie was a garbage collector, and so it's reversing, I guess, the order of how you first said it. Charlie was a garbage collector, and he saw the house. He was in the nicer neighborhood of Lincoln for his job, and that's when he saw the house.
Okay, Charlie was a garbage collector in this nicer neighborhood in Lincoln, and that's when he saw the house. He also kept a garage, or he had a car that was kept in a garage on Woodsdale Avenue, which was right around the corner from South 24th Street.
Is that Harvey Griggs' house?
I don't know which house it was. I don't think so, but there was another garage on Woodsdale.
Do you mind saying that one more time, but to characterize it as my grandparents, so we have it both ways?
Yeah. You mean right around from my grandparents' house?
No, that he saw my grandparents' house. He had a garbage room, and that's how he saw my grandparents'
Well, that's not exactly what might have really happened, but do you want me to say what really? Okay, it's sort of like, I feel like I kind of am like, he was a garbage collector in the neighborhood of Lincoln. Charlie was a garbage collector in the neighborhood in Lincoln where my grandparents lived, and it is thought that while the house wasn't on his garbage route, at one point he shoveled snow in front of their house and was perhaps brought in for a hot meal by the maid Lillian Fensel.
Thank you. And do you mind just closing that loop? And so that's why he decided to go back there.
That's why he decided to go back there. However, there is debate about whether he let Carol Ann pick the house or not.
Yeah, there's some question that he said, pick the nicest one you can find, or you get to pick this, and she picked that one.
Mm-hmm.
But the objective, it sounds like, was let's find a nice house for the car.
Right.
And could we just say that one more time?
The objective was to find a house that would have a good getaway car, a nice car, fancy car, an expensive car that would allow them to travel far away without any mechanical issues, perhaps.
How did he get into the house on that morning? Maybe the morning, it was July.
No,
January 28th.
The morning of January 28th, Charlie and Carol Ann spend the night in Bob Jensen's car on the corner, and then at 6:30 in the morning, he parks Jensen's car in the driveway. Actually, it was 8:30. I have to go back. Carol Ann and Charlie spend the night in Bob Jensen's car around the corner from the house on South 24th Street. Then at 8:30 in the morning, they park Jensen's car in the garage, and Charlie forces himself at gunpoint into the kitchen, through the kitchen door.
And how does the day unfold for them?
The day unfold. Well, let me start. So Charlie enters through the kitchen door, and the maid says that Clara Ward is upstairs and getting ready for the day. She comes down at 8:30, sees the newspaper on the kitchen table, which shows a picture of Carol Ann and Charlie on the front page, looks at Charlie, and it's apparent that she knows exactly what's going on. She goes about her day. They wax a table. She empties out the fridge. And while Charlie and Carol Ann relax on sofas and write notes to the law, and Carol Ann cuts out pictures of her family from the newspaper. At around 11:30, Charlie asks my grandmother, he asked my grandmother to make him pancakes.
Back at about 11:30.
At about 11:30, do you want me to say my grandmother or Clara?
Consider
War.
my mother.
At around 11:30, Charlie asks my grandmother to make him pancakes and then changes his order to waffles, which she serves him, and then asks if she can go upstairs to change her shoes, at which point he claims that she took a shot at him, though no bullet holes were ever found or any weapon, so he stabs her in the back and hits the poodle with the butt of his gun. Then he returns downstairs, leaving her tied up, and wait for my grandfather to come home from work. It's unclear in testimony when Lillian Fensel was tied up and stabbed, only that it was dark, so it's really hard to know if it was before or after my grandfather came home from work. But my grandfather came in through the kitchen door. Charlie forced him into the basement. He says that my grandfather picked up an iron and tried to hit him, at which point Charlie shot him, but he could still get up the stairs and was shot again at the front door and fell to the floor. And when Charlie said, "Are you okay?" nobody answered.
There was a thought that during the day that, first of all, can we establish that they had this poodle?
Yeah,
So that when we're talking about it, actually maybe we shouldn't, because we probably won't.
right.
Should we talk about the poodle?
Poodle.
Probably not. Okay.
No dogs in the reenactment?
Sometimes
There's a Chesapeake Bay Retriever named Queenie, too, who survives the whole thing. She's like the only living survivor.
Right.
Yeah, she was put in the bathroom.
That's right.
She was alive and she survived. And
Can we talk about the demeanor that your grandmother kept?
yes.
Yeah. Here.
Oh gosh, sorry.
No.
My heels are poking holes in your black.
Oh, that's
Fine.
Hey, George.
You're flying through these, so. Do you water? How are you doing?
Oh yeah, I'll have a little coffee. That was intense. Like, haven't thought about that in a while.
I know.
It's kind of twisted how I know like every last detail.
But also just say it.
Yeah, I mean, writing it is different for me. It's like a different part of my brain, but saying it is weird.
How do you look at?
It's weird saying really shocking things out loud.
Yeah.
When they're related to you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm
You're like,
There's a little,
I
there's
would,
a little
right.
bit on her
Right.
side.
You're like, oh, a news person says this.
Right.
I wouldn't say this about myself.
right.
Family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
I'm wondering if you could talk about both Lillian and your grandmother and how they tried to go about their day. They tried to keep calm, and then I'm wondering, like, I thought that your grandmother tried to make a phone, like, she was going to
Oh,
make
yeah.
a phone call,
hmm
and that's when he attacked her.
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Maybe she tried to.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're right. Lillian, my grandmother and Lillian went about their day with enormous courage because they both knew that no one had come out of an encounter with Charlie alive. So I can't even imagine the incredible fear that they must have felt, and yet the composure that they had to carry on with these daily tasks was astounding to me. And I am so proud of my grandmother for the way she handled herself. She had a church coffee clutch that morning, which Charlie told her to call and cancel, which she did, saying that she wasn't feeling well. And then Charlie claims that she tried to make a phone call upstairs, and that's when he had to attack her.
Later on, when Charlie's arrested, authorities mentioned something specifically about your grandmother and Lillian. And he, in the moment with the authorities, says, well, aren't they, they're alive though, aren't they? And I'm wondering if you could state that, but also say how police interpret that. As that maybe Carol Ann had something to do with it.
Okay. When Charlie and Carol Ann are apprehended, the police go down the list of people he has killed and mention my grandmother and Lillian Fensel. He looks at them and says, wait, ain't they alive? Which leads the police to wonder if Carol Ann may have had more to do with this crime. You want me to say that again?
Yeah.
It's like taking it from where?
They say, ain't they alive? And the police think, huh.
Okay.
What's police reaction to him saying, ain't they alive?
The police think that perhaps Carol Ann has been more involved with at least this instance in the crime than they previously suspected. That perhaps she is not a hostage, but a willing accomplice.
Why is Carol Ann charged with murder? And I'm saying this because Charlie's saying she didn't have anything to do with it, and she's saying I didn't have anything to do with it. So why is she charged with murder?
Carol Ann is charged with murder because it seems to the authorities as if she had several instances in which she could have escaped. There are various moments on the spree where it seems that he needed somebody to help him. For example, when Bob Jensen was marched down to the basement, I'm not sure what I'm talking about now. Wasn't there something like they thought that they couldn't have done that crime? He couldn't have done that crime alone?
I don't know know that, I thought that they thought that she was the one who used the knife on Carol.
Oh yeah, do you want me to say that?
Can you say it?
Yeah. Okay. But that's not the problem with the timeline is that I don't know that they knew that right away.
Well, now we're at the point in the timeline where they're starting to reveal.
Okay.
Now we're starting to get later into the timeline.
Okay, so this is later into when after they're captured.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, yeah. They can't. So where do you want me to take it from? I'll just do the Lillian and.
You want to do the Lillian first?
Well, I
think it's because because they think, how could he have tied up?
the police start to question Carol Ann's involvement. It seems that she had every opportunity to get away had she chosen to. And several parts of the crime seem difficult for one person to have done alone. Lillian Fensel was tied up, so it seems that I don't know. Sorry, I keep stumbling here.
No.
Okay, I'll start.
Lillian Fensel was tied up, and it seems like, you would maybe need help to do that.
Right. Lillian Fensel was tied up, and it seems as if two people had to have done that. Also, Carol King was stabbed numerous times in the groin, which Charlie says later on Carol did because she was upset that he had been attempting to sexually assault Carol King.
What does Carol Ann say? Does she say, yeah, I totally helped?
Carol Ann says that she was a hostage the whole time and had no idea that her family had been killed by Charlie. He kept promising that they would be okay as long as she went along with him and said nothing. She says he claimed that he had taken them hostage and kept them in the garage on Woodsdale Avenue near the Ward home, and that as long as she went along with him, everyone would be okay.
She's 14 at this point, and I'm wondering if you could just touch on the fact that even though she's 14 and a juvenile, she's tried as an adult, which is sort of that's surprising.
Carol Ann is 14 and a juvenile, but is tried as an adult and is the youngest person. Wait, sorry. What am I like?
The youngest woman or the youngest person?
No, the youngest woman. Right. Okay. Carol Ann is 14, is tried for first-degree murder, and is the youngest female to have ever been tried for first-degree murder in America.
So, when Charlie gets put on trial, and then he is found guilty, and then he spends his time in prison, and his story starts to change. Before we even go there, I'm wondering if you can say, how reliable of a narrator is Charlie in general? And where I'm going with that is his story changed, from one minute to the next.
Charlie is a most unreliable narrator. He's a known liar. His story changes from one moment to the next, depending on the weather.
And after his trial, he's in prison, and he seems to have this change of heart towards Carol, whereas before he was saying she had nothing to do with it. That seems to change. I'm wondering if you could talk about what happens when Charlie testifies at Carol Ann's trial, how his story seems to change and kind of throws her under the bus, essentially.
Initially, when Charlie is caught, he claims that Carol Ann had no involvement in any of these cases and that she was just an accomplice. Not an accomplice. In the beginning, when Charlie is caught, he claims that Carol Ann had nothing to do with any of the murders. But during her trial, He claims that she was there with him all the time and committed 2 of the murders herself.
Do you mind, sir? I think I heard a murmur back there while you were saying. Do you mind saying during her trial, I don't know if it's word change of heart or his story really changed.
Okay.
He really implicated
During
her.
Carol Ann's trial, Charlie seems to have a change of heart and claims that during Carol Ann's trial, Charlie has a change of heart and completely changes his story and claims that Carol Ann was responsible for at least 2 of the murders herself. But he refuses to wear his glasses during the trial. And when the lawyer says, "Can you see all right?" he says, "Nope, there's nothing here I want to see."
I didn't know that. Broadly speaking, I'm wondering if you can also say, like, during the trial, he doesn't say that she killed everyone, but he implicates her.
Mm-hmm.
He throws blame on. He implicates her in pretty much each of the.
Right.
At least that at least she had knowledge of each of those
Right.
things going into it and didn't say anything to police.
Charlie claims that Carol Ann had knowledge of all of the murders, that she knew her family had been killed and went along with it and was responsible for at least 2 of the murders. He claims that he left Lillian and my grandmother alive, but that she went back into the house saying that she had forgotten something, where she proceeded to stab them and came back to him because she had been thinking that he sexually assaulted my grandmother and was jealous.
And was there any evidence to suggest that?
There was no evidence of any sexual assault towards my grandmother.
Why do you think he was telling the truth on the stand, Charlie? This is your opinion.
I don't think that Carol Ann and Charlie have any notion of what the truth is. I don't think the truth matters. I think he's telling the truth every time he tells it. And so is she. I think that's what draws them together.
But that truth is malleable.
Yeah. The truth is malleable to both Charlie and Carol Ann. Truth is the way they see the world and what they make of it and the impact that they have on it. So he could tell you one thing one day and something else the next, and it would be true to him no matter what the facts are. So it's really hard to know who's telling the truth here. It's lost in time, pretty much.
Oh yeah, the instant after it happened, it was lost in time for them. Feel free.
Okay.
Go for it.
I just...
I'm getting into the outcome of Carol's trial and well, what is the just that simple? What was the outcome of Carol Ann's trial?
The outcome of Carol Ann's trial is that she is convicted of the first-degree murder of Bob Jensen.
And what is she sentenced to?
She is sentenced to life in prison.
Do you mind just, sorry,
Okay.
a little bit? Because Carol Ann is sentenced to...
Carol Ann is sentenced to life in prison, but is let out on parole in 1975.
Sorry, Maria? Just a couple stories. So
I'm getting into what her own defense of herself was.
Okay.
Did we talk about that already?
Yeah, that she thought her parents were being held hostage.
Yeah. I wanted to also talk about, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, like when we talk about crime and the public's perception of crime, that in that first victim that someone, let's say it's a spree killer or someone like, that they get, the Bartlett family really thinks about a lot, but that as each victim, with each victim, the attention paid to that particular victim starts to kind of wane.
Mhm.
So that fewer people know about your grandparents, more people know about the Bartletts. And why we focus on, why people remember Charlie Starkweather, but they don't remember all those victims.
People remember Charlie Starkweather, but not all his victims, because I think people get overwhelmed by the sadness. And when somebody kills that many people, they become so infamous and such an aberration of humanity and decency that they become the object of speculation and almost the dark star of the whole show. I'm just not sure I agree. Like, I mean,
Tell me.
I don't know. I think it's, I mean, by the time you get to poor Merle Collison or whatever, I'm sorry.
Merle Collison, yeah.
Like, no one even, you're right, no one talks about him at all. I think it's because, well, I don't want to say it on camera what I think, so I'll just, yeah.
What are your overall impressions of this case? Like, why do people still think about it or talk about it or reference it?
The Charlie Starkweather case will never leave the consciousness of America because it's seen as a time when the heartland lost its innocence. I think it put Nebraska on the map in a way, and people still remember it there. They still talk about it all the time. Everybody remembers where they were the day Starkweather was apprehended, or where they were when the whole state was looking for him. They have not forgotten a moment of it.
What do you think about, just talking about Nebraska, we talked a little bit about the landscape and how you were driving, when you were driving to Nebraska, it was, you know, you were listening to the soundtrack of Nebraska. Like, can you talk about the landscape? You were saying like the wide open space, the flat. And I guess talking about 1957, 58, what is Nebraska like? What does it look like?
Nebraska is a state mostly of farmland. There are very few cities. Lincoln is perched on the very eastern edge of the state. To further east of Lincoln are other cities, but to the west, it's all farmlands and straight dirt roads, and the state tips gently upwards until it meets the mountains in Wyoming. It kind of feels like the gateway to the west.
What is that sense of place? Is there a sense of place there? Does it feel like you're free because you're wide open?
There's an incredible sense of place in Nebraska. Feels like a small town. Everybody still knows each other. But there's also this sense of the sky opening up after Chicago, Council Bluffs, Omaha, and it just becomes a place where you could run forever and not get caught.
Does it feel like, go ahead.
My hair is causing
Wild
so
hair
many
sale.
problems. I should have gotten.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay,
It's just hair.
right.
It's like shut.
It wants to do its thing, and we keep putting it in one place, and it doesn't like it.
It's really sad. Like,
How does that look out?
Yeah, that's great.
I've never been to Nebraska, so I am curious because
oh yeah.
like to me, I just wonder, like, does it feel depressing? It just
Well,
because
no, I mean-
they seem so depressed because they were economically depressed, I suppose. But you don't. But it's not.
No, people have an opinion about Nebraska that's not exactly accurate. And things that have been written about this case when it comes to the state of Nebraska are not exactly accurate either. Sometimes I wonder if the writers actually have ever been to Nebraska. But Lincoln is and was a city during this time that has a university and a gold-domed capitol, and the residents are generally conservative, happy, and good-natured people. I have never met a Nebraskan who was unfriendly. It feels like a small town everywhere you go. It still feels like 1958 a lot of places you go. And that's a nice, warm, good feeling.
In 1958, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, can I just cut my hair? Sorry, what do I keep doing?
Situation where, like, if we had
It's like windblown or something.
it's not that, it's not static.
No, it's not.
It's me moving my body. Okay.
I think also it was hairsprayed and now it just wants to bust out.
Okay.
Is that what look, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that Lincoln isn't.
We have 2 minutes, but 2 minutes. We're going for an hour, we have an hour 15.
Cool. If it's not running reliable, then just keep going, because I don't want you to run out of time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's what I'm going to right now. Yeah, great. Maria was just reminding me to ask you who were your grandparents. I'm like, that's the one I was on.
Right.
Chris, do you want to walk back? That's cool for you. So in 1958, early 1958, who are your grandparents? I'm trying to think. Do we want to say my grandparents are Lauer and Clara Ward, or Lauer and Clara Ward are my grandparents?
My grandparents.
Who are your
What?
grandparents in 1958?
My grandparents are Lauer Ward and Clara Ward.
And what is their life like?
My grandfather, Lauer, is president of Capitol Bridge and Capitol Steel. My grandmother is vice president of the Alumni Association of the University of Nebraska. They're members of the country club and the Episcopal Church, and they're very involved in the community.
Do they have any kids, and where do they live?
My grandparents live in the country club section of Lincoln. They have one child, my father, Michael, who is 14.
And where is your father going to high school in Lincoln?
Fortunately, my father is away at school in Connecticut, where he's a student at Choate.
Just for people who don't know the word Choate,
Okay.
school, I wonder if we could say they have a son.
Okay.
And he goes to they have a son who's my father, and he goes to school out east or something
Okay.
like that, boarding school or
Okay.
attends school out east.
They have a son, a 14-year-old son named Michael, who goes to boarding school out east.
Oh, okay. Can we do it the other way? Lauer. Is it okay to say Lauer?
Yeah.
Was he Lauer?
Yeah, Lauer's great.
Okay.
Yeah. Lauer.
Lauer Ward and Clara Ward are my grandparents.
Okay. Lauer and Clara Ward are my grandparents.
And they have
Oh, you want me to do the whole thing?
their son Michael's my.
Okay. Lauer and Clara Ward are my grandparents. Their only son, Michael, is my father.
And he's 14 and going to school.
He is 14 at the time of the murders and going to school back east.
Who's Lillian Fensel?
Lillian Fensel is the housekeeper who has worked for the Ward family for 26 years at the time of her death. She came with the house, apparently, when my great-grandparents died. My grandparents moved into the house, and Lillian was there to assume the duties that she always had.
Can you talk a little bit about the house? I knew you said your great-grandfather built it, right?
Mhm.
And what it was like, because you spent time, like, it sounds like it was a very nice house. Could you just talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, my great-grandfather built the house on 24th Street. And I'm not sure, oh, sorry. My great-grandfather built,
The 19th.
I don't know when he built the house. That's why I'm like, I don't know.
Okay.
My great-grandfather,
Just one more time.
my great-grandfather, Chester Ward, built the house on 24th Street where he lived with my great-grandmother until his death. It was a white brick house with a rose garden and large pine trees on a beautiful lawn. It had an elegance inside and a bright, sunny kitchen, an arched doorway into a living room, and soft, beautifully carpeted stairs up to a second floor. It was a lovely home, and it was always felt like a happy home. And even after these murders, when I went back there as a girl, it continued to feel always like a happy place.
You talked about with your book, maybe could we talk in this answer to, like, just say I wrote this book
Yeah.
about, and what people would say to you when they would meet you, like when you went
Yeah.
on tour and people would come up to you and
Right.
say your grandfather was, stuff like that.
I wrote a novel loosely based on the events of this crime. It's called Outside Valentine. And in it I chose to talk about more the effects of tragedy on removed generations than the actual crimes themselves. And at my readings, in Nebraska especially, people would come up to me and say that they have never forgotten the Starkweather homicides. People sometimes mail me things. I received my grandmother's jewelry box just a couple of years ago that someone had bought in an estate sale. Somebody once told me that they had my grandparents' Packard. So people have collected these things, seeking to hold on to this crime in a way I'm not completely sure I understand, as my relationship to the crime is different. But no one has forgotten.
Yeah, that idea of no one forgetting, I remember you saying, like, when people come up to you, they'll say, like, I remember where I was, X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if you could talk about, like, sort of that, it's not immediacy, but it's still very relevant to them.
It's not that the crimes, the Starkweather homicides, are immediate to these people but they remember where they were exactly when the news broke. Everywhere I go, people of a certain generation tell me stories. A friend in Montana, her father says he remembers the convoy of cars returning from Wyoming. He was 12 years old and he stood up on his fence in Llewellyn, Nebraska to watch them pass. It was a celebrity event. It was so dark and tragic that their imaginations, they could never have possibly imagined that this would happen, and it shook them, and the world was never the same for them afterwards. I suppose it became a part of everybody's collective consciousness. It became part of their identity. So I suppose it's no wonder that they hold on to these things and can't forget, because in a strange way for many people, it made them who they are today.
Do you think about I don't want to get into the whole fate, but you just kind of wonder, like, if they just picked another house.
I always wonder what it would have been like if they had just picked another house, or if the police had handled things differently at certain times. I wonder what my father would have been like if I would exist, if he would have married my mother. It goes on and on. Whether I would have been a writer, whether I would have felt that I had anything to say, I don't know. It's a part of my identity.
Is there any part, like, we didn't get into any, when we talked about, your grandparents and Lillian. Is there any part of the crime that whole time period that I haven't asked you that often comes to mind that you feel like sharing? I always come back to Bob Jensen. I just feel like Bob and Carol, like I always think about them and how they were just.
Yeah. I mean, you mean other parts of the crime. I think about all of the victims a lot of the time, especially being a mother now. I think about Betty Jean, Carol Ann's baby sister, and her killing in a way I never could have thought about before I was a mother. It's just completely unthinkable. And then Carol King and Bob Jensen so just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and sometimes that's all it takes, and it just turns the hand of everything. That's frightening.
I'm wondering if we should do some pickup lines. Yeah.
We've got a few listed at the end of the question.
Did we talk about how people don't lock their doors in Nebraska?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I said that.
Do you mind bringing that? You did kind of talk about how everything is
Yeah.
a small town, but
Yeah.
it's like the feeling of safety and
There's-
crime.
yeah.
Could you talk about that? So in Nebraska in 1958.
In Nebraska in 1958, there's a feeling of utter safety. People don't lock their doors at night. Everybody trusts each other. This kind of thing is absolutely unthinkable.
Thank you. Marie, can you think of anything else? Yeah, maybe we should just do it. That Lillian was dead. The fact that Lillian, when Charlie came in, did he know Lillian? I think he did know. Did he know that she was dead?
I don't know. I mean,
Do you think that we will get into that? That seems like a very specific.
I feel like that probably had something to do with it, though.
You do?
Well, yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't think it would be part of your TV show, but I feel like if she was deaf, it could have caused some confusion. I don't know. I just always thought maybe that's why she let them in.
I think that we may just table that because it seems like a big thing to. So. Do you want the bigger list? Yeah. Actually, I won't need that because we just went through our limited things. So now I'm wondering if we can just say some key phrases.
Yeah.
Like in names. Can you start with your grandparents, Lauer and Clara Ward?
Lauer and Clara Ward.
And can you say it like a couple more times with those space in between so we can use it for editing purposes?
Lauer and Clara Ward.
The Ward family.
The Ward family.
Can you say it one more time as though it's the start of a sentence? The Ward family.
The Ward family.
Charlie Starkweather.
Charlie Starkweather.
Charlie and Carol.
Charlie and Carol.
And maybe a couple more times. Can you just repeat it?
Charlie and Carol. Charlie and Carol.
Later that day.
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 The previous day.
The previous day.
And a couple more times.
The previous day. The previous day.
The next day.
The next day.
The next day.
The next day.
Back in Lincoln.
Back in Lincoln.
In Lincoln.
In Lincoln.
In Lincoln.
In Lincoln.
After Charlie's trial.
After Charlie's trial.
After Charlie's trial.
After Charlie's trial.
Before Carol Ann's trial.
Before Carol Ann's trial.
During Carol Ann's trial.
During Carol Ann's trial.
Say it one more time.
During Carol Ann's trial.
Sorry, just one more time, just a little bit more slowly.
During Carol Ann's trial.
Charlie tells investigators.
Charlie tells investigators.
Charlie told investigators.
Charlie told investigators.
At first.
At first.
At first.
At first.
Later on.
Later on.
Later on.
Later on.
And then, therefore.
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 Because.
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 And.
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 Then.
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 But.
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 So.
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 Oh.
There's a question.
Yes.
Just having heard.
Hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I just popped in, I'm sorry if I missed this, and you may have already talked about it, but you said a couple of different things that feel like maybe there's a connection you could draw for us. You talked about how people remember where they were when the manhunt was on.
Mm-hmm.
And you also talked about how at that time people had not locked their doors
Mm-hmm.
before. And I'm wondering if anyone has ever told you what their fears were as the manhunt was going on, what was going through their mind about what could happen. Because there's something unique about how he did this, showing up seemingly at random and killing people, wrong place, wrong time for no reason.
Well, there was the feeling that nobody was safe. So suddenly, everybody's world completely changed. They became suspicious of everybody who walked past them. They locked their doors. They picked up their children at school with guns. And I suppose that feeling is something they'll never forget, of a complete reality shift. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to be in your island. Do you feel that changed something then? Given that it was a place where people did lock their doors before, do you think there was a change that has never entirely gone back?
And you can look at me when you.
I think there's a change.
Do you mind starting one more time?
Okay. I think there's a change. There was a change in the American psyche at that point. And there was a great suspicion about teenagers that began in this kind of undercurrent of rebellion. And people began to worry about teenage populations and the propensity for rebellion and rule breaking, and the thought that, quote, ordinary children could go to the darkest places.
Can we just bring up one? Sorry, were you
No,
talk about like your grandparents were pretty great people. I'm just wondering if you could say like, you know, they were really invested in their community. They were really part of their, you know, like your grandfather had meeting at with the governor just the day before. Could you just talk about their grounding in Lincoln?
My grandparents were, their families had been involved with the building of Lincoln itself, quite literally. My grandmother's father came from Sweden with 70 cents in his pocket and ended up building many of the buildings in Lincoln. They were very invested in the community. They traveled a lot. They had artistic interests. They were part of charities, the country club. It was a place that belonged to them, and they belonged to it.
And can you just translate like the loss of that, of their presence? It's a loss of like one of the the key families of, not key families, but it's a big loss in the community. It's a big place a big void.
Losing my grandparents created a big void in Lincoln. There was nobody who wasn't touched by it. Because if people like them could be killed, and people like Marion and Velda Bartlett could be killed, then anybody could be killed.
Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, probably, but I won't think of it until like next year, like when pointless.
Well, they're done.
Okay.
All right, we're just gonna record a little room tone.
So just 30 seconds where no one talks.
Okay.
Silence. And room tone, thank you, I'm cutting.
Thanks. I feel like didn't want to say this on camera, but I feel like the reason why my grandparents, I feel like they were kind of protected from